Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here at SaaS Innovate. My name is Joy DeBolt. I have the privilege of introducing our next speaker, Kyle Basile. Kyle, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about SaaS Speedy Store. What is SaaS Speedy Store, and what does this really allow us to do in the enterprise AI market? Can I give a thumbs up if you guys can hear me? Make sure that we're all good? Perfect. So when we look at SaaS Speedy Store, we're talking about a fast data platform for applications and analytics at scale. Now, when we look at scale, what does fast mean? What does real time mean? We're talking about applications that you need real-time metrics on petabytes of data. This can be terabytes of data. This can be many different scales at which you're working with. Specifically powering massive apps at scale like we're doing at Posten. Norwegian Post is doing their track and trace on all their shipments across the entire country of Norway to understand how and where a parcel is. When we talk about analytics, we can talk about our Morgan Stanley use case, where all of their ODS, their trade data, is getting analyzed and making sure that it's going through the trade process successfully, and that is 6 petabytes of data running with single store and allowing you to actually manage that data in a very efficient and effective way. And then finally, as we look at what really the main point of today is how are we building AI applications, a great use case is what we're doing at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is vectorizing all of their 10Ks and SEC filings within their customer dashboards, and allowing customers to search against them next to their trade data, next to their analytics, and a lot of the great aspects that they're able to query within a single store engine. When we try to identify really where we fit, we look at the unique value proposition of what SaaS Speedy Store brings to market. We're looking at applications that we can augment or replace different pieces of the data infrastructure where they don't just have one of these panes. If a customer has just a data size pane, they have a lot of data, that's not going to be the best fit for single store. But if a customer needs to query that data from a speed perspective or from a concurrency perspective, if they have a large data size with a high concurrency need, they have an ultra fast ingestion need with low latency query needs, they have 2 or 3 of these pain points. That's really fundamentally where a modern infrastructure like SaaS Speedy Store comes to market and allows you to go deploy a really efficient and proficient data solution to support all of your VIA workloads. When we look at the types of applications that it's supporting today, I mentioned our Goldman Sachs, but also inventory management. When we look at all of the real-time inventory to understand exactly what's in store, what's in transportation, how do we effectively put this in our direct-to-consumer applications and run analytics on it, that's a great use case for single store. At Dell, we're doing all of the Salesworks platform. All of their sales data when it looks from their customer churn all the way up through the actual customer support. How are we actually vectorizing all of the support text data for us to go search against? These are all applications that are a great use case for modern scale out, scale up data infrastructure for you to support for your workloads. But today, we really want to talk about how are we building those modern applications. Within SaaS Speedy Store, we have this concept of a single shot query. With the great infrastructure that we have sitting and supporting the SaaS Speedy Store, we have the ability to query transactional data, analytical data, as well as JSON and vectors, all within a single query. That allows us to deploy applications where we're going to not just do conversational AI, where we're doing just text data, but we're actually deploying analytics and responses for LLMs with contextualized data. You're getting the customer's history, you're getting the customer's transactions, and you're also getting all the great LLM responses that you want to feed to the customers to go support those applications. And we'll go through a demo after we go a little bit deeper into why Speedy Store for these different use cases, but really fundamentally, how are we integrating all of this into a single solution, a single store for both generative AI workloads, as well as all of your traditional analytical applications and direct-to-consumer applications. When we look at this within the SaaS infrastructure, we're looking at augmenting what customers are doing today within their Snowflake and Databricks infrastructure. We're looking at replacing what they're doing within their transactional systems or open source databases. But fundamentally, we have an ease of use capability in our technology to get data and hydrate data into that speedy layer for you to go deploy those modern applications, those modern analytics, and support all of the analytics within your VIA infrastructure. SaaS Speedy Store is an embedded database sitting to support your VIA infrastructure for us to run actual SaaS code in database. We want to push as much as we can into the database to minimize the need for a lot of your memory footprint, a lot of your CAS footprint, and make a more efficient, cost-effective, and performant infrastructure for you to scale out and scale up all of your analytics as well as the data to support those analytics. Now, when we look and move into the generative AI space, this is just an added kicker. We get to add in all of the great aspects of this Speedy Store with the vectorization of data, the indexing of those vectors, as well as the ability to search in hybrid nature, a semantic nature, or just text search against the data itself. So when we define a great use case for enterprise AI, this is not necessarily just your conversational AI use case. We're not just talking to text data, we're taking text data in, vectorizing it, and text data out. We're talking about the actual analytical queries to feed in context to those different solutions in the generative AI applications. We're talking about data that's the history of the customers, the transactions of the customers, as well as all of the other documents that we want to build a response around and consolidating that into a single infrastructure, a single point for your generative AI applications to work on top of. When we look at that data layer, a lot of it is basically built upon the business logic, all of the reasoning, the co-pilots and agents that organizations are building out today. But what we want to frame it around is really the performance. When we look at performance around generative AI, it's kind of a new aspect. A lot of sandboxing has been done, a lot of testing has been done, but when we roll this into a consumer application, we don't want to wait 10 seconds for a response. We want that response to be native, efficient, contextualized, and in real time. We want to have millisecond response times for those different applications, and SingleStore is the layer for you to go build that out with. This layer will allow you to build the data fabric pieces, the governance around those vectors, and the ability to go deploy and deliver the data for all the agents, the different AI capabilities, everything that comes from co-pilots, the ability to do a lot of different types of integrations with different types of tooling. What we believe is really the most performant layer will win. If you think about an agent and what an agent's going to be doing in the future, it's going to be making a lot of decisions on its own. It's going to decide where's the best place to go get the data, where's the most data that I can access, what's the most actually contextualized data that I can build this response based off of. And if you have a layer to support that, and a data layer and a data fabric that's going to be the most performant layer, it will choose itself. We believe SingleStore is that layer, and we see a lot of customers choosing that layer that we'll go into a little bit more after the demo to see who's actually leveraging these capabilities. So just to add to kind of what we're talking about when it comes to an agent and agentic framework, we have a demo here. This demo allows us to look at what an AI financial advisor will do and make decisions for based off of a user's input. I'll go through here and introduce kind of why we can use the SaaS Speedy Store as the best engine for this type of tooling, but also go in some of the capabilities and some of the benefits that you'll gain off of using that layer for a lot of these different builds that you'll have within your organizations, as well as the analytics that you want to run on that data. So as I kick this off, what we're going to do is basically take a use case where a user is going to be able to input their name, their savings, their annual income, and then a desired outcome. This desired outcome is very dynamic, and a user can input really anything that they want to input. One thing I'll bring your attention to is on the left side here, there's this navigation pane. This navigation pane is built off an agent. The agent's going to make a decision of what type of investment plan is going to be best for the desired outcome. For this simple demo, I'll go ahead and enter my name as Bill, my current savings, my annual income, and just as a starter, I'll say, hey, I want to get crazy. Let's make the most risky investment possible. I want to get rich off crypto. Give me a plan to get rich off cryptocurrency. What the agent's going to do is take the user's input. It's going to create a plan for a crypto investment and say, these are the most likely ways to go invest in crypto, and give you a full response based off of a language model. Now, this language model today, what we're using is OpenAI, but we've built this with Anthropic, we've built this with Gemini. There's a lot of different models that you can plug and play depending on what your organization wants to use. But the crypto investment is not going to give us the most context. That's going to give us a pretty simple approach of how we can do risky. What if I want to actually invest in a long-term strategy? I want to buy a home and invest in my children and make sure that they can get to college. What this is going to do on the left side here is build out a 529 plan. It's going to build out an actual mortgage investment plan, as well as a much safer investment portfolio with a lot of ETFs in it. A long-term dollar cost averaging investment portfolio for us to go look at and how we can start to build a personalized investment plan based off of our inputs. So one thing we're able to do within Speedy Store, and the ability that you can actually start to deploy all of these different analytics, all these different visualizations, is the ability to do this on the fly. That agent's building these dashboards, that agent's building all of these investment options that you have, as well as gathering all of the news. So it's going out and saying, what's our latest articles, what's our latest blogs, what's our latest information that's out in the market, so we can go search those. But we also can control the data that's sitting and feeding this generative AI model. When we look at the agent and the actual model that's getting fed, all of the data within this bearer statement and confidence statement is all confined within the single store infrastructure. It's not going out to the general purpose market for us to get data. What that allows us to do is to reduce a lot of the hallucinations, reduce a lot of the risk that gets induced if we were to send an agent out into the world and go decide what data is going to deliver to the end customer. We can control that data within our infrastructure to understand what vectors are we going to allow that language model to get built off of, how is the actual language model going to build the features and all the insights, and actually produce a much more confined solution and contextualized solution for that end customer. So when I click on this AI Insights tab, this is going to actually go build out based off of the 10Ks that we have vectorized inside of SingleStore, which I'll show you what the tables look like here in a second, to understand what the risks are, what our opportunities are, and then also what the recommendations are for future investments when you want to increase your investment portfolio, how do you want to dollar cost average, and build a response based off of the OpenAI model that we're reaching out to and getting that language response back. So based off of our recommended investments, we're going to show what those risks are, we're going to show what those opportunities are, what those recommendations are. Inside SingleStore, we're just holding a lot of the vectors of the 10Ks, and we're also holding all of the customer's transactional data as well as customer history within SingleStore. What that allows us to do is also look at different live trades. SingleStore is also a transactional engine. So we're able to look at live data within the market to tie into real-time market feeds. This real-time market feed is a simple table inside SingleStore to where we can create pipelines into a real-time market feed and allow you to run analytics against it. So this analytics can run against live market feeds, it can run against historical market context that you have stored inside your data infrastructure, and you have the ability to dynamically change and understand where a specific market position is. If you wanted to run analytics over that market position, all these have the accessible and capability within SingleStore. So what I'm going to do here is pause. This is a simple table built out inside SingleStore to where you'll notice this is really standard SQL. When we build a table, this is just going to call out the specific columns, and we're going to create a table that we're feeding that live data into. When we're switching between Apple and Tesla and the different market positions that we want to look at, those are just simple where clauses that are getting written into SingleStore based off of what that agent is looking at and looking to deploy and looking to build those tables off of. So a really dynamic way to look at how we are visualizing data sitting within the data platform, as well as a way to interact with it. The next part, if we scroll down here, we're going to see the actual vector table. So when we look at SingleStore and handle vectors inside SingleStore for all the embeddings and all the text search that we want to do, this is also a simple table. This bottom table here that we can see, at the third column down is just V, that's type vector, and those are all the embeddings that we have stored to go search against and to feed into those different language models. So a very simplistic approach to deal with vectors within your database for you to not have to go source a separate Milvus or Pinecone or other different data infrastructures that will be only specific to the vectors and not have the full context of everything else that the customer has, the customer history and the customer transactions. What that also allows us to do is govern. When we have a table that we have standard governance sitting inside of our data infrastructure that we're supporting either through SaaS or for actual database governance, when we treat this vector as a column, this column is going to be governed specifically against all of our PII data, let's say, all of our GDPR data, whatever we're actually governing against can flow through into those vectors based off of all the columns that we have inside of a table. So we can carry all of the governance and reduce all the risk within these different tables because of what SingleStore is. It's a database, right? We get all the good aspects of a standard ANSI SQL compliant data infrastructure for you to go deploy and interact with these AI models. So something that we can think about from an agent or if it's a RAG approach, depending on how you're deploying your generative AI, this allows us to really break down and fundamentally support all of those different interactions we have with a model with a standard SQL table. This is something that we see a lot of customers flocking towards. That Goldman Sachs use case, historically, we had ran all of their wealth management dashboards just with their transactional and analytical information. About 18 months ago, they said, well, what if we were able to add vectors into this table? What can we do with those type of vectors? They simply just added a column into the same table that they were querying against inside of their dashboard, and that column was type vector. That vector holds all of the 10Ks. There was a second type vector, which holds all of the SEC filings, and they were able to search against those that were related to the customer, related to the investments that customer has, and build a personalized question, natural language question that they can ask specific to their investments. So you're now dealing and managing data in a very standard way in the market, but just with a new type. We also do the same thing with JSON data. If we have a JSON type and column, that allows us to ingest full JSON objects. We can have specific aspects of that JSON object. We can flatten out the JSON objects to make more analytic ready use cases. There's a lot that we can do from as we ingest data into SingleStore with all of our pipeline features, all of our CDC features, for you to go leverage and get data in a format for you to go either build these applications on top of, these dashboards on top of, or deploy all of your language models on top of this data itself. So great way to go look at how we can standardize on a data infrastructure to support all of these analytics as well as generative AI use cases inside these applications. When we look at customers that are using these Speedy Store vectors, there's a lot, right? We talked about Goldman Sachs. Direct Apply is actually vectorizing every single application that comes into their platform and allowing for HR to go search and look for specific aspects of a document rather than going and looking one by one to see if it's a good fit for the resume that their applications are applying to. If we look at Lumana, they're actually vectorizing all the video feeds. So in retail stores, when they're taking video, they're looking for theft. They're looking for specific types of individuals that are making actions that are not normal and abnormal and looking for theft. How they're able to do that is vectorizing all of that video and searching it within SingleStore. So anytime you want to index, anytime you want to look for performance, run different types of searches within SingleStore, that allows you to really deploy a lot of different use cases, no matter if it's for a financial institution standing up an application, if it's a more new age customer that's delivering a service like Lumana where they're doing theft prevention and fraud prevention within these organizations, or if it's Siemens. Siemens is doing this with all of their IoT data. They're taking IoT data with all the sensors and any text that comes along with the logs, they're actually vectorizing all of those logs for searches against all of the actual kind of predictive maintenance, preventative maintenance use cases that they have, but adding more context into it, allowing them to go search the actual logs that are happening within the different machinery, within the different systems for them to go look and deliver a more contextualized response. So the more data that we can feed into the language model to control what the response is going to be, the better we can build responses into those end customers, and fundamentally allows us to stand up a better data layer for all of these models and all of these agents. So this is really what we have the capability to go deliver to the market today, and a lot of really interesting things that we can go kind of design our different data solutions for a lot of these different types of applications. When it comes to the SaaS workloads, we also are talking about intelligent decisioning. When we move into these intelligent decisioning, more agent-like use cases, those intelligent decisioning workflows that are working on top of SaaS also are going to work with SingleStore to support from that data layer. That Speedy Store layer will actually deploy the same data for you to go make those intelligent decisioning and build those models in intelligent decisioning within SaaS on the same data that you're seeing here that customers are using to go deploy generative AI applications. So a lot of great use cases that we can talk to, a lot of great demonstrations that we can talk about when it comes to specifically generative AI, a lot of great use cases. When it comes to the rest of SingleStore, where we directly go to market, most of our kind of historical customers are built around transactional and analytical, mixing those workloads and delivering a solution on real-time data. We look for fast ingestion around how we can get data in faster, as well as how can we analyze that data faster. This just carries along and gives our unique value proposition in the market to these generative AI solutions as we add in those vectors and build out, again, that more contextualized layer for those applications. So that is my 20 minutes. I wanted to leave 5 minutes for any questions that anyone had.
So I have a quick question. So for this Speedy Store, it's not bounded or kind of with the VIA. So I mean, if I don't our company don't have Via, I can still use this
You can
feature.
still use this, yes.
So it's like pay as you go or pay as you need it like basis.
Yeah, there's a whole licensing models built around that, which we can take offline. But yes, this is both a standalone product as well as an embedded product within Via. We have a lot of customers that will look at leveraging the Speedy Store layer to start with, and as they move into Via, their journey into Via, they already have that data layer ready for those Via workloads to where they can go move into Via a little bit slower as they bring jobs over into Via. So there's a lot of different ways that we can stand up the data layer to support future workloads as well as existing workloads.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. What a wonderful
Thank you.
presentation.